Welcome to Generation Digital Workforce, the podcast that's here to explore the role of robotic process automation and other digital technologies. Whether you're just getting started or you're looking for advanced strategies and tactics, if you're curious about where human and digital workers are coming together to transform the future of work, then this podcast is for you. All right, let's get into the show.
Hello, welcome this week to Generation Digital Workforce. I have with me today Sean Dawson from Robiquity. This is Zena Seaton, and I'm coming at you from Austin. Hey, Sean,
Hi.
Where are you today?
Hi, Zena. I'm in Palo Alto, California.
All right. Well, I bet it's a beautiful day out there. It is here in Texas.
You know what? The thing is, when you live in California, you lose the ability to complain about the weather. It's crazy the way that it works. Now, everybody does complain. We complain just as much about the weather as you guys do, but we're complaining about a temperature band that goes from, 70 to 73, as opposed to a temperature band that goes from 30 to 140.
Well, yes. So you have been to Texas then.
I have. I spent a number of years in Texas. I am no stranger to Texas.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell our guests a little about yourself and a little about Robiquity?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I've been in kind of the RPA industry going on, 8 or 9 years now. I was one of the founders of a company called Virtual Operations here in the U.S., and we were one of Blue Prism's very first partners in the Western Hemisphere and helped build out the business. I then joined Cognizant and built their intelligent process automation. Was one of the founding members of their intelligent process automation group, and also started the RPA advisory group within Cognizant, and just left this past January to be the CEO of Robiquity. So Robiquity, we've been around for about 3 years, and we started off as a recruiting company. Our goal was to be the place that you go to get quality RPA talent. If you're looking for a Blue Prism developer and you want to make sure that you get a really, really good one, you go to Robiquity and we'll make it happen for you. And what we found is, beyond, it wasn't just enough to go out to the market and find people. We also had to train and mentor them. And so we built this training and mentor capability on the top of this recruiting capability. And so we became very, very good at recruiting people, and then we became very, very good at training and mentoring people. And then we discovered that even that wasn't enough, right? Even once we have the recruiting and the training and mentoring down, it's not enough just to have really great resources. You also need to have a really great operating model that they're operating in. And so we developed, on top of our abilities, we developed a consultancy that would put in that operating model into clients and then help them become self-perpetuating, right? And so we were founded and still to this day operate as an enablement organization. My goal is to make sure that, a year or a year and a half or 2 years after we start doing business together, my goal is to make sure you don't need me anymore. But I want to be creating so much value for you, you don't want to see me go.
Awesome. Great. Love it. So I love how you've, kind of moved from recruiting to training to self-enablement. That's a really great flow for people to go through. And I think it's one of the best ways to be successful with onboarding a digital workforce. And I know you, in your introduction, mentioned you had been at this a while. If you look at, the literature, RPA, the space that digital workers play in, if you will, is a business strategy we've seen talked about since about 2012. But we still only see a small number of businesses really utilizing it today. I'm interested in your perspective on why that is, having been part of this industry for so long now.
Yeah, it was interesting. Back in the 2012, 2013, 2014 timeframe, we had to tell people what software robots are, and we don't have to do that anymore. It seems like everybody's heard of it. It certainly got tremendous hype and all of that. But to me, I think about it in the form of two components, really. There's how much have we penetrated the market in terms of, how many or how good of a job are we doing making, getting everybody this automation mindset in terms of how many companies are doing RPA, right? And the second thing is within those companies, how well are we penetrating those companies? And when I look at how we've done as an industry over the last 8 years that I've been a part of it, we started from nothing almost. And we've done a pretty good job at that first thing. We've done a pretty good job penetrating the market. I mean, of the largest maybe 20,000 companies in the world, we probably are in a lot of them, right? I mean, I'll bet you we're in maybe half of them. But then if you look at how well we've penetrated and how effective the programs, the RPA programs within those companies are, I give us a very, very low rating. And the fact is that the vast majority of clients of this technology are not really seeing the kind of benefits that they could be seeing. And a lot of them aren't even seeing the kind of benefits that they expected to see. Now, in most cases, I think they have programs that are profitable for them, but they're not seeing the 3x, 4x, 5x payoff that the customers who have the most effective programs have. And I think that the core reason for that is that a lot of organizations approach this as a series of projects. And so they're, okay, what bot am I going to build now? And what bot am I going to build next? And all of that. And one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of clients make because they look at it that way is we'll go in and we'll do a process assessment. And we'll come up with what's called a process catalog. And the process catalog is an ordered list of opportunities for automation. And the first thing everybody does when you give them a process catalog is they sort in descending order by benefit. And they point at the top one and they say, give me that one. And of course, that's what you're going to do if you're thinking about it as a series of projects. Give me the one that has the best benefit, and then give me the next one, and then give me the next one. But if you're thinking about it, you have to realize that each individual project, even if it returns a fairly high return for an RPA project, is something like 4 or 5 FTE. Even if it returns 4 or 5 FTE, that's not going to move the needle for your business. What moves the needle for your business is having a program within your company that A, is really, really robust at identifying opportunities for automation, has an automation mindset, B, is able to build the bots that implement those opportunities, and C, is able to run them at scale. And whether those opportunities are 4 FTE opportunities or 2.5 FTE opportunities or 1 FTE opportunities that are that have ROI, that doesn't matter. You need a whole bunch of them in order to really move the needle for the business. And so that requires treating it as a practice. And if you treat it as a practice, if you're going in there and you're saying, okay, well, I want to build an effective RPA practice, you're going to take that process catalog. You're not going to sort it by benefit. You're going to sort it by how difficult the opportunities are to implement. And then you're going to build the easiest ones first. Now, of course, you never build one that doesn't have ROI, but you want to start off building it easy. It's exactly like if you're going to go to the gym and you were going to try to squat, to have a world record squat. You're not going to go in then and start squatting 500 pounds. You're going to start off squatting as much as you can, and you need to build that muscle up. And the exact same thing is true when you're looking at an RPA program.
Yeah. So in building a practice, I'm sure you have, a set of key success factors that you would give to, your customers. And I would bet that recruiting and training and mentoring and self-enablement are on that list based upon, Robiquity's methodology that you spoke about earlier. But if you had to, name the top 3, the top 5 critical success factors that someone needs to have going in and building this practice, what would they be?
Yeah, well, yeah. So, and you're absolutely right. I mean, from our standpoint, we believe that you need to retain the brain, so to speak, right? You have to you need to be able to do this stuff in-house. You need to cultivate the automation mindset in-house. You need to understand what it takes to build a bot. You need to understand what it takes to operate them, even if you're going to outsource a lot of that work. And that's a philosophical thing. I mean, I can understand that people might disagree with that, and there are certainly other ways of going about it. That's something that I believe. But the most important thing in terms of critical success factors is there aren't 5. There's 1, and then there's like 4 more. And the one at the very top of critical success factors, the one thing is data discipline. And what I mean by that is you have to know for the entire life cycle of every single automation, every single opportunity you look at needs to have a benefit associated with it and a cost associated with it. And you know what that is. And we do a really good job of doing that on the front end. Everybody knows, everybody has a process catalog that has a list of opportunities, and everybody knows what the benefit is, and everybody knows what the t-shirt size is on how hard that is going to be to implement. And then that's how we prioritize. But a lot of organizations forget that after they prioritize it and start implementing. And the fact is, when we sit down to develop a bot at any stage, at any life cycle stage, we do prioritization, and we select a bot for implementation. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to do process definition. We write what's called a process definition document. And at the end of that process definition document, you might decide, I don't like my ROI anymore. That ROI, the ROI that you think you had when you put it in the process catalog, I think it's going to be a 5 FTE benefit, and it's only going to take me 2 weeks to build. Well, after the PDD, that 5 FTE turns into 4.5, and that 2 weeks turns into 3 weeks. And after the solution design document, it gets eroded further. And after we build it, it gets eroded further. And the fact is that as we get farther, those are guesses. As we get farther down the life cycle of building bots, those guesses, we become more and more confident of those guesses. And the guess about the benefit of the bot is the last thing we ever know. And so once we have it built, we know for a fact what the cost was, but we don't know what the benefit was. And a lot of people forget to keep measuring that. Now, what I mean by data discipline is keep track of the benefit and the cost, the expected benefit and the expected cost at all times through your life cycle. So you should be able to look at any bot that you have running, and you should say, here's how much time that we've spent. And the way that I prefer to do it is using an agile methodology called story points. Do it however you want. But so I like to be able to ask the question for every single bot, how many story points does this represent? How many story points does it represent on implementation, and how much have we spent maintaining it? And what's the benefit? And at the end of the story, you better have a really good answer to what's the benefit and what's the cost. And there better be good ROI on that. Because unless you have ROI on the individual bot level, obviously you're not going to have ROI on the practice level. And I got news for you. Is in this new post-pandemic or current pandemic world, people are going to be looking really, really, and they're going to be scrutinizing the benefits of our RPA programs. And if we're not able just to answer the question off the top of our heads, what's the benefit of our RPA program, then what are we doing? Right? If you're driving a car and you're supposed to get from Los Angeles to Dallas, or I don't know, in your case, maybe Austin to Dallas, right? You know, it's a 180-mile journey. If somebody asks you, well, how long until we get to, if your kids say, when do we get there, Mom? Well, you're going to be able to tell them. Of course you know how fast you're driving, you know how far you are, and you know how far you are from Austin. But we lose sight of that. A lot of programs lose sight of that when it comes to their RPA program. And we've gotten away with it for a while, but I don't think we're going to get away from it for much longer. So the most important thing is everything comes down to ROI, and that's about data discipline. Now, how do we make sure that we have a quality practice beyond data discipline? There are a lot of things. It helps to make sure that you have a really, really healthy automation pipeline. There's a bunch of ways to do that. You know, we go out and we'll do automation assessments, and that's a pretty good way. We can generate 10 to 20 good opportunities by sending a business analyst in, but there's a point of diminishing returns there. And the way to generate 200 or 300 opportunities is to cultivate an automation mindset within the client. We can do that too. And there are ways to do that. You do training, you reduce fear, uncertainty, and doubt. You bring a process in so that people can nominate opportunities, and we cultivate those kinds of opportunities. Obviously, change management is a big deal, right? Everyone expects that they're going to be, they'll put the bot into production, and all of a sudden we magically get this benefit. And the fact is, we don't. Unless we know what the benefit's supposed to be and we're measuring it, going back to data discipline, and we force the organization to capture that benefit one way or another, then we're not going to get that benefit. Another big mistake people make, it goes back to the notion of building a practice versus a project, is not structuring to scale. So they'll go build a proof of concept, and it's fine. It's a bot that kind of runs, and that's fine. But again, one bot doesn't move the needle for me. What moves the needle for me is 50, 100, 150 automations in production. And so I need to be able to scale to that, and I need to be able to build my very first bot in a way that if I pump 20 more on there, then I'm still going to be able to run them, and I'm going to know how we do that. A lot of organizations just kind of limp through their first POC, and it's like pulling teeth or pushing a rope how to get their first bot in production. And if that's the way you feel about it, then you'll never be able to scale. And we don't win unless we scale. And then the last thing I would point out there is about resourcing. I've done a lot of talks with a lot of different practitioners in this space, and going from small companies who have a small footprint to gigantic companies that have grown very, very, very quickly. And the one thing that is in common in terms of what it takes to succeed in running and scaling your practice is resourcing. And that means getting the right talent pointed at your problem when you need it. And there's a lot of big challenges, and some of those challenges are industry wide, right? We don't have a large number of Blue Prism certified developers who are able to really create value in an organization. That is a relatively rare skill. And so, finding that is kind of tough. Then you have customer specific challenges where you might work for a bank that, it takes 3 months to onboard somebody. Well, okay. Well, so if I have to do 3 months of predictions about what, to bring someone on, that changes the entire way I think about how I can scale up and scale down. I can't just bring 5 people on to do 2 projects over these next 2 months and then not bring them on anymore, or then take them off the rolls. That doesn't work, and so I have to plan for that. And my resourcing needs change depending on how much process identification I'm doing and the types of resources that are doing that versus implementing bots versus running bots. And getting that mix right of the correct talent focused on your problem at the right time is tremendously difficult, and it's not obvious that it's going to be difficult. And so it's important to plan for that.
So let's talk about that plan part a little bit. If I'm sitting there and I've done nothing and I begin today, what's the timeline that I should be looking at? What's the maturity curve across that timeline? What does success look like?
I haven't met a single client in my entire 8+ years of doing this. I haven't met a single client that has less than 5 bots or licenses or whatever, however we want to do it, however you want to measure it, that can't be at 50. And, there's some level at which we're breaking even, and it's not 5, and it might not be more than 10. It's not less than 5 and not more than 10. It really depends on the organization, the types of processes that you have, and how well you're utilizing your bots and all of that. And obviously, what we're trying to do is to build a machine within our business that, it takes in $1 on the left-hand side and it produces something like $3 or $4 on the right-hand side. And that machine, and then once we have that machine built, we want to scale it up. So how many dollars can I put in the left-hand side, right? And so how quickly do I want to see that happen? Well, obviously, as fast as possible. What's reasonable? Well, the fact is, if you don't have visibility to a reasonably high number of bots, like, or automations, something like 50 automations by the time you've been at this for 6 to 8 months, if you don't have visibility to something like 50 automations, then you could. And then you're missing opportunity. And that's a shame, because everybody wins. The more automations you have in production, assuming you've got that data discipline down and you're focused on your ROI, the more human capital you're freeing up to do meaningful work as opposed to rote work. And that's a good thing for everybody. So I typically like to see customers have visibility in how they're going to get to 50 automations within something like 6 months. And, I've seen customers scale from nothing to 150 in 12 or 18 months. And that's absolutely possible. It's not the average. Certainly the average is much lower than that because of those problems that I was talking about before. But a really well-run organization can it feels, when you're in that organization, it feels comfortable. You feel like you're operating at scale. You feel it's like driving a Rolls Royce, right? You get in there and you're like, man, this is a really, really well manufactured car, as opposed to driving a go-kart. And that's what it feels like. And if your practice doesn't feel that way, and you've been at it for something like 6 months, then you need to make it feel that way. And there's a lot of ways to do that.
That's good insights there. And I want to come back to something you said there about retraining staff when automations have come in and digital workers are now doing the work that, the humans used to. And I think you'll have some perspectives on that, being the background of Robiquity. But before we jump in there, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on some of the new ways that people are talking about, RPA, robotic process automation, this, industry you've been in for 8 years. I've been in for about 3 now myself. Yep. And, you're starting to hear, Gartner say things like hyper automation. And I think Forrester likes to use intelligent automation. Right. Are these things really different, or are they just new fancy words for RPA, or how are they different?
I have a theory. It's completely speculative and I have zero evidence, but my theory is that analysts get fired if they don't come up with a new term to name something every 5 years. And I think that's job security for them. They've got to come up with a new way to call this thing, whatever it is. And, in the new term that Gartner came up with for what we're talking about here, what we called intelligent process automation when we started the practice at Cognizant, and that is called hyperautomation. And the way that I like to break it down is we've got RPA at the core. And RPA, it's very simple. It's software that mimics human actions, and it's set up in a way that it can do it at scale. And it's simple to define. It's not, there aren't that many tools that can actually do it that way. And so at the core, we have RPA, but RPA by itself is somewhat limited in its applicability. What we want to be able to do is automate human activities within our business that are not currently being automated today, but could be, right? We have some amount of activity that humans are doing in our business that computers could be doing better, and we want to take that off of the plates of the humans. That's our whole job. So RPA is part of that, and we can address a significant portion of what people are doing today, and we could take a lot of that off their plate just using RPA tools. But it's not everything. We also need the other thing that happens. The reason that humans end up doing things computers could do better is in part because what the business has to do expands. Every business in the world is that way. What they have to do in order to create value in the world expands over time. And that happens for 2 reasons. Number one, it happens because the world changes, right? We get a global pandemic and all of a sudden everybody has to work from home. And what does that mean, right? But the other reason it happens is new technologies come online. And if we're going to integrate those new technologies in an effective way in our business, then RPA tools are a great way to help knit those emerging technologies into our legacy systems. And so what are the legacy technologies? Well, obviously it's things like artificial intelligence, it's machine learning. It could even, for certain businesses, it could even be blockchain or quantum computing or that sort of thing. How do you, if we're looking 10 years down the road and you're an insurance company and you have a quantum computing model that's able to predict, or even a machine learning model that's able to predict the likelihood of a casualty in certain circumstances, but you need to get that into your legacy claim system. How do you do it? How do you even know that it's valuable to you? RPA is a really, really great way to pilot that and get that working in your business. Before you know whether it makes sense to integrate into your core systems. And what they mean by hyperautomation is RPA tools plus the other tools that enable this entire industry to attack the problem in a holistic way. And that's what we meant when we talked about intelligent automation. That's what we meant when we talked about intelligent process automation. That's what we've been talking about for years and years. And I do think it's helpful to, the analysts are doing us a service by helping package this up in a way that makes sense to think about it. But just because it has a new name doesn't mean it's something completely different.
Yes, I agree on that perspective. And I had a previous guest, and I will apologize in advance that I don't recall who at this moment, but he said that, really hyperautomation is RPA with the bits that allow it to have the intelligence that a human might have. So I thought that was an interesting way to think about it as well. And that it really expands, the real estate. I think that might have actually been you or John who used that phrase with me, actually expands the real estate of what the robot worker can do.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Very interesting stuff. So, so kind of a little bit of a maybe tangent here, but I'm interested in hearing some thoughts on retraining your staff. One of the things we really talk about in Generation Digital Workforce is, the trends behind what digital workers are now doing that is freeing up, your knowledge workers to actually do more knowledge work, because the knowledge worker has become burdened over the last 50 years with data and the analog world that we're forced to work in. So as, and this is kind of exciting probably for you to think about too, and, knowing that you have a young son and that he'll be coming into the work world someday. What new careers do you think are out there that are looming, and what should we be thinking about how to train some of, our employees as they're being freed up? What skill sets should we be thinking about they need to be learning for jobs of the future, with digital workers being there, doing those tasks that they won't have to do anymore?
Yeah, I love that question, and I think about that kind of thing a lot. I've got some nephews and nieces that are just getting into college age. They're either late high school or college, in their early 20s. And they're trying to figure out what to do to create value for the world. And I've got a young son; he's 18 months old, and I think about that a lot. I mean, what does his world look like, and how do you do it? And at the end of the story, it all comes down to how much value can you create for the world, because that's what you trade the world for its gold, as a friend of mine used to say. And the advice that I give to my people, I tell them a story, and the story that I tell them is I have a very close friend who's a very well-renowned cardiologist, and he and I own an airplane together. He owns half of it, I own half of it. We fly around a lot together, and he actually owns several airplanes. I've flown in them with him, and this cardiologist, this man is very, very smart. I mean, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And we'll sit in the airplane and we'll be doing something. We'll be doing an approach or something like that. And the avionics will not act the way that he expects them to act. And he will be getting frustrated, and I've never been in this plane. I don't know how the avionics work. I've been in other planes. I've designed, I've done all sorts of stuff, but I've never been in this particular plane with this particular set of avionics. And I said, and I'd say to him, what are you trying to do? And he goes, oh, well, it's not capturing the glide slope, and here's the problem. And I said, well, try doing this. And I'll tell him to click this button and then this button and then this button. And he'll do it, and it works. And he'll be astonished. He'll say, how did you know to do that? And I said, well, it just seemed like that was the obvious way to do it. But there's a reason that I thought to do it that way. And the reason is because I'm a computer programmer. I know how to talk to computers and get them to do stuff that I want them to do. And I've developed software. I've developed software like the avionics system in the airplane. And so I can imagine if I were the designer of this piece of software, where would I put this menu item that controls whether the glide slope is turned on to this mode or this other mode? And then that's where I look for it. And my friend, who is, he is, again, one of the smartest people I've ever known, he's not a computer programmer. He doesn't see things that way. He doesn't know what it's like. He knows how to go into a heart and make sure that it's not blocked up. And he can install a valve through the vein in your wrist, which I don't know how. I don't know any of that stuff. I don't know which vein I need to connect to in the wrist to be able to get to the heart in the most effective way. And I think that the most important skill that everyone is going to need 10, 15, 20 years from now is, I think that the world is going to separate into people who know how to program computers and people who don't. And not because programming computers in particular is going to be an important skill. It's not. Not everyone's going to be a computer programmer, but because this extra benefit that it gives to you, that it imparts just because you know how that's done, is going to be really, really important. I believe that 20 years from now, knowing how to program computers is going to be like knowing how to read was in the middle of the 1800s. It is going to absolutely set people apart from each other, and there's going to be an entire economy available to people who understand that world and know how to make it work, versus the economy that is not accessible to those people that are going to be stuck in this old economy that we have, which, by the way, is fine. It produces a lot of value, and it creates a whole standard of living for people. But I think 20 years from now, that's going to be the most important thing. And I think it starts now.
Yes, it always starts well before it starts, if that makes any sense at all.
And by the way, our technology, this RPA technology, is one of the ways that we're democratizing that knowledge. You're not going to get me to say that I think that people who are processing healthcare claims ought to be programming robots. I don't think that. But you are going to hear me say that as they get access to these types of automations, and as they understand, oh, this is the job I used to do, and this is what the robot now does, and now here's what I do. As that happens, our industry is going to help make that a possibility. And that's something that I don't think gets, the whole robot apocalypse notion of the robots coming and steal our jobs, which is what a lot of critics of this industry used to tout. It's not happening as much anymore. But that whole thing is a very negative outlook on progress. And the fact is that, there are challenges that are associated with technology coming in and doing things that humans used to do. But that has always been the case. It used to be the case that humans would be out in the fields picking cotton. And that doesn't happen anymore. We have machines for that. And now one human driving a tractor does the work of hundreds of people. And that's a good thing, because now, if you look at it as, what about the 150 jobs that are now lost because this guy has a tractor? Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is look at the human capital that is now freed to doing other things that aren't picking cotton. And what does that mean for the price of clothes? And what does that mean for what people are doing with their lives as opposed to sitting out in the hot sun? What does that do for long-term health and enjoyment of people's lives? And that's the way I think we ought to be looking at it.
Yes, I love that way of thinking about it. And if we can be part of that, all the better. So I think what I'd like to do is ask you one more question, and we'll close on this note. Something tangible for our listeners to walk away with. If they're thinking about this, but they haven't done anything yet, what should they do? What is the, 2 things they should do, after listening? What is just the 2 things they should do to get going?
Yeah. If you're not doing anything today, it's never too late. It's important to get informed about, what this industry does and what it's not. I've got an article that we can link to that talks about where RPA fits into the digital transformation landscape. And that would be a good place to understand, how to think about this and where to put in, but get a good vision for what you can accomplish using this kind of technology. And then the second thing is look into that data discipline thing, especially if you have a program already. You hold yourself accountable to this notion that you should know how big your pipeline is in terms of benefits and cost. And how are we measuring those things, and how big is my pipeline? On the development side, how much throughput am I getting in terms of benefit and cost? And on my operations side, how much benefit and cost is represented in the army of bots that I have working on my stuff? And if you don't have, hold yourself accountable to a very, very high standard of tracking that stuff and putting it in there, because someone else is going to hold you accountable eventually. And when that question comes knocking, if it hasn't been asked already, it's coming. And you're going to want to be really, really well prepared to answer it. And, it helps to talk to partners, partners like us that have been around the block for a long time, who've seen a lot of different implementations, know what's common and what's not common, and what you can accomplish and what you can't accomplish. It really, really helps to talk to people. And, it doesn't cost very much to have a conversation. And I love having these conversations. So reach out to me if you want.
Great. And for all of our listeners out there, you can learn how to connect to Sean in the show notes. So please reference there and follow him on LinkedIn so that you're always up to date on all of the good articles he puts out on a regular basis. Sean, look forward to having you on the show again soon. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
I did too. Thank you so much, Dina.
You've been listening to Generation Digital Workforce. If you want to hear more about RPA, AI, and other cognitive technologies that are shaping the future of work, join us next time as we continue to go deeper on these topics with industry innovators and experts. To make sure you never miss a future episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. And if you've liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. It's one of the best ways to help more people find valuable content. For show notes and more info, visit us at blueprism.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.